The 71-year-old white billionaire stepped out of the back of his black Rolls-Royce on Fifth Avenue in Manhattan at exactly 4:47 in the afternoon. His name was Mr. Henry Whitfield. He was the founder of Whitfield Global Holdings, a private investment firm valued at $23 billion. He had been planning to walk 3 blocks to a private dinner at the Plaza Hotel. The cold November air hit his face. He pulled the collar of his cashmere overcoat up around his neck. He was about to start walking south on Fifth Avenue. Then he heard the voice. The voice was very small. It was almost lost in the noise of the Manhattan traffic. But Henry Whitfield stopped walking. He turned his head slowly toward the corner of Fifth Avenue and 56th Street. Sitting on a small piece of cardboard against the cold marble wall of a closed luxury jewelry store was a small black girl. She was 11 years old. She was wearing a worn navy blue coat that was 3 sizes too big for her thin shoulders. Her shoes were scuffed and missing one shoelace. She had a small cardboard sign next to her on the sidewalk. The sign said, "Just trying to eat. Anything helps. Thank you and God bless." There was a small paper coffee cup in front of her with $7.43 in it. The girl was singing. Henry Whitfield had been a serious classical music collector for 43 years. He had funded the Metropolitan Opera personally for the last 26 years. He had personally attended over 2,000 professional opera performances during his life. He stood on the corner for a full 30 seconds, completely frozen, listening. The song the girl was singing was O mio babbino caro from Puccini's opera Gianni Schicchi. The song was traditionally sung by professional sopranos at the highest levels of opera. The 11-year-old homeless girl on the cardboard piece was singing it in perfect Italian, with a vocal tone that Henry Whitfield had heard exactly 3 times in the last 20 years from professional opera singers at the Metropolitan Opera. None of those 3 professional singers had been 11 years old. Henry Whitfield took 3 slow steps toward the small girl. The girl finished the song. She did not look up. She simply began to quietly sing the second movement of Bellini's Casta Diva, another notoriously difficult soprano aria. In flawless Italian, Henry Whitfield realized that his own hands were shaking. He pulled out his cell phone. He started recording. The girl finished the second aria. She finally looked up. Her eyes were calm and steady. "Sir, would you like to make a request? I know 47 different arias in 5 different languages: Italian, French, German, Russian, and English. The donation jar is right here, sir." "Thank you." Henry Whitfield could not speak for almost 10 full seconds. The 11-year-old homeless girl had just casually mentioned that she had memorized 47 professional opera arias in 5 different languages. Before this story breaks your heart and rebuilds it again, do me one small favor. If you believe a child's gift cannot be measured by the warmth of her coat or the cleanliness of her shoes, hit that like button right now and subscribe to the channel. It costs you nothing. Now let's rewind. Because to understand who that small black girl on Fifth Avenue was and how she had become homeless with 47 memorized opera arias in her head, you have to go back 12 years. The girl's name was Ileana Brooks. She was 11 years old. She had been born in 2014 in a small apartment in the Bronx. Her mother, Camille Brooks, had been one of the most promising young black opera singers in the United States. Camille had attended the Juilliard School on a full scholarship. She had been considered the next great American soprano of her generation. She had been the lead understudy at the Metropolitan Opera by the age of 26. Then, 6 months before her debut at the Met, Camille Brooks had been hit by a drunk driver while walking home from a rehearsal. The accident had not killed her, but it had permanently damaged the laryngeal nerves in her throat. Camille had lost the ability to sing professionally forever. Camille Brooks had married a kind young man named Marcus Brooks 2 years later. Marcus had been a music teacher at a small public school. The 2 of them had welcomed Ileana into the world when Camille was 30. Camille had been determined to give her daughter the musical training she could no longer use herself. From the time Ileana was 3 years old, Camille had taught her daughter every single technique she had once been taught at Juilliard: vocal placement, breath control, Italian, French, German diction, the 47 arias from her own personal repertoire. By the time Ileana was 8 years old, she could sing professional-level opera in 5 different languages. She had a vocal range that her own mother had never achieved at the same age. Camille and Marcus Brooks had been planning to enroll Ileana at the Juilliard pre-college program when she turned 12. Then last year, when Ileana was 10, both of her parents had been killed in a fire at their small apartment building in the Bronx. Ileana had been at her grandmother's house in Queens for the weekend. Her parents had been at home asleep when the fire spread to their floor. They had not been able to escape. Ileana had moved in with her 73-year-old grandmother permanently after the funeral. Her grandmother, Mrs. Dorothy Brooks, had been a kind woman with a small social security check. 6 months ago, the apartment building Mrs. Brooks lived in had been sold to a developer. All of the rent-stabilized tenants had been forced out within 90 days. Mrs. Brooks had moved into a small one-bedroom unit in a subsidized senior housing facility in Queens. The senior housing facility had a strict rule. No children under the age of 18 were allowed to live in the building. Ileana had been informed that she would have to enter the New York City foster care system, or she could stay with her grandmother quietly during the day and find somewhere safe to sleep at night. Ileana had chosen to stay with her grandmother. She had spent the last 4 months sleeping at her grandmother's apartment quietly during overnight hours when the senior facility's check-in office was closed. During the day, Ileana had to leave the building before 9 o'clock in the morning. She had been spending her days riding the subway around Manhattan. She had also been singing on street corners to earn small amounts of money for food. She had made approximately $43 per week singing professional opera on the streets of Manhattan. That afternoon on Fifth Avenue, Henry Whitfield was now sitting on the cold sidewalk in his cashmere overcoat next to the 11-year-old homeless girl. He had taken a small notebook and a pen out of his coat pocket. Ileana had told him about her mother Camille, about Juilliard, about the drunk driver, about the fire, about her grandmother, about the $7,000 per year tuition. Henry Whitfield was crying quietly. He had been a hardened Wall Street investor for 46 years. He had not cried in public since 1998 when his own wife had passed away from breast cancer. He was crying now because the 11-year-old homeless black girl sitting next to him had just told him that her late mother Camille Brooks had been at the Met as the lead soprano understudy in 2015. Henry Whitfield had personally been at the Metropolitan Opera in 2015. He had personally heard Camille Brooks sing at a private donor reception 2 months before her car accident. He had personally written a letter of recommendation for Camille Brooks to be promoted from understudy to lead soprano 2 weeks before the accident. The promotion had never been finalized because of the accident. Henry Whitfield had remembered the name Camille Brooks for 10 straight years. He had wondered, from time to time, what had happened to the most promising young black soprano he had ever heard sing live in his entire career. He had not known that she had died in a fire. He had not known that she had left behind an 11-year-old daughter with the same exact extraordinary voice. Henry Whitfield slowly stood up from the cold sidewalk. He took off his cashmere overcoat. He gently placed it around her thin shoulders. The coat was so big on her that it almost touched the sidewalk. "Ileana, sweetheart, would you please come with me to a small dinner I am going to attend at the Plaza Hotel 3 blocks from here? There are some very specific people there I would like you to meet. We will bring your grandmother home with us afterward. I have a guest house on my property in Connecticut. There are 7 empty bedrooms in it. Would you and your grandmother like to come live in the guest house, sweetheart?" Ileana Brooks looked up at the 71-year-old white billionaire. She had not eaten a real meal in 2 days. She was also a quiet, brilliant child who had been raised by her late mother to know that the most dangerous thing in the world is a stranger who promises a small black girl too much too quickly. "Sir, with all due respect, I do not know who you are. I do not get into cars with people I do not know. My mother taught me that very carefully when I was very small." Henry Whitfield smiled gently. He pulled out his cell phone. He showed Ileana a photo of himself with the general manager of the Metropolitan Opera. He showed her his New York State driver's license. He showed her his business card. Then he did one final thing. He pulled up an email on his phone from 2015. The email was from Henry Whitfield to Mr. Peter Gelb, the general manager of the Metropolitan Opera. The email was a personal letter of recommendation. The subject line of the email was Camille Brooks, lead soprano promotion. Ileana Brooks read the email slowly. She read it twice. She looked up at the old white man with tears now running down both of her cheeks. Henry Whitfield knelt down on the cold sidewalk in front of her. "Sweetheart, I knew your mama. Your mama had the most beautiful voice I ever heard sing live in my entire life. I wrote that letter trying to get her promoted at the Met 2 weeks before she got hurt. I have been wondering what happened to her for 10 years. I am so sorry I did not know about you, baby." Ileana Brooks stood up slowly from the piece of cardboard. She gently took Henry Whitfield's hand. The 71-year-old billionaire and the 11-year-old homeless black girl walked together down Fifth Avenue. They went to the small private dinner at the Plaza Hotel. The dinner had been organized by Henry Whitfield to honor 4 major donors of the Juilliard School and 3 senior administrators of the Metropolitan Opera. The dean of Juilliard was sitting at the table when Henry Whitfield walked in 20 minutes late, holding the hand of a small black girl in a cashmere overcoat that was too big for her shoulders. Henry Whitfield personally introduced Ileana Brooks to every single person at the dinner table. He asked her to sing one short aria for the guests. Ileana walked over to the small grand piano that the Plaza Hotel kept in the private dining room. She did not need accompaniment. She simply sang Casta Diva in flawless Italian. She sang for exactly 4 minutes and 33 seconds. The 8 wealthy adults at the dinner table sat in completely silent shock for the entire performance. The dean of Juilliard, a 64-year-old white woman named Patricia Holloway, was crying openly by the end of the 3rd measure. She had personally taught Camille Brooks at Juilliard 16 years earlier. Within 24 hours, Henry Whitfield's recording of Ileana Brooks singing on Fifth Avenue had been released to the public. The video had been viewed over 200 million times in its first week online. Within 72 hours, Ileana Brooks had been offered a full scholarship to the Juilliard pre-college program, plus a full scholarship to the Juilliard regular program when she turned 18. The Metropolitan Opera itself had quietly invited her to perform a single aria at their annual gala fundraiser. She had performed O Mio Babino Caro in front of 3,000 attendees, including former presidents and the King and Queen of Spain. Henry Whitfield had personally adopted Ileana Brooks and Mrs. Dorothy Brooks as part of his extended family. They had moved into the guest house on his Connecticut estate within 10 days. Henry Whitfield had also personally established the Camille Brooks Memorial Foundation. The foundation was funded with $150 million from Henry Whitfield's personal fortune. It provides full scholarships and living expenses for talented black opera students from low-income families across the United States. The foundation has now placed over 200 black classical singers in major training programs in its first 18 months. 6 months after the incident, Ileana Brooks was invited to perform at the annual gala of the Juilliard School. She stood on the stage of the David Geffen Hall in New York City. She was now 12 years old. She wore a simple navy blue dress, the same color as the worn coat she had been wearing on Fifth Avenue. She sang for exactly 12 minutes. She sang 4 arias, the same 4 arias that her mother Camille had sung at her own Juilliard audition 28 years earlier. The audience of 3,000 industry professionals stood up and cheered for almost 5 full minutes when she finished. Ileana Brooks then walked to the wooden podium at the side of the stage. She had to use a small wooden box to reach the microphone. She spoke for exactly 2 minutes. "Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Ileana Brooks. 6 months ago, I was singing on the corner of 5th Avenue and 56th Street for spare change because I was hungry. Mr. Henry Whitfield was walking past me. He stopped because he heard my voice. He stopped because my mama, Camille Brooks, had taught me everything I know about singing before she passed away. She taught me 47 arias in 5 different languages on the small piano in our living room in the Bronx. She did not have any money. She did not have any fame. But she had her mother's voice in her throat. And she gave that voice to me before she went to be with our Lord. Mr. Whitfield, sir, the thing that you heard on 5th Avenue 6 months ago was not my voice. It was my mama's voice. And I want to thank you, sir, for stopping to listen. Because my mama waited her whole life for somebody who looked like you to stop and listen. And the day you stopped is the day my mama finally got to sing at the Metropolitan Opera through me. Thank you, sir. So here is what I want to leave you with tonight. Camille Brooks spent 12 years quietly teaching her young daughter every single piece of musical knowledge she had earned at Juilliard before a drunk driver took her professional voice away from her forever. The world had decided that Camille Brooks, a black soprano with a permanently damaged throat, did not deserve to ever sing at the Metropolitan Opera. The world was wrong, about all of it, because gifts do not ask permission to exist. The arias a mother teaches her young daughter in a small living room in the Bronx can come back to make a billionaire stop walking on 5th Avenue and weep on a cold November afternoon 10 years after the mother is gone. Think about the Ileana Brookses around you right now. The quiet black girls with worn coats and scuffed shoes who are sitting on cardboard pieces in your city singing arias their dead mothers taught them. The grandmothers raising children alone, because the system has not built enough safe places for them. The poor families building professional artistic skill in silence that the world will eventually have to bow down to. If this story moved you tonight, do me one final favor. Smash that like button. Subscribe to the channel so you never miss the next story. And drop a comment below telling me about an Ileana in your own life. Because the world is full of small black girls singing the songs of their dead mothers on cold corners that the rest of us walk past too quickly. And the only question that matters tonight is whether we are humble enough to stop and listen the next time we hear a voice that does not belong on the sidewalk. See you in the next story.